like to start with a quote. I think that's from Shakyamuni Buddha. Does everybody know Shakyamuni Buddha? Anybody not know the Buddha of our age, Shakyamuni Buddha? Here's a quote. Cherish everybody without limit and spread love everywhere without limit. Cherish everybody, even if they're above you. Cherish everyone who's below you. Cherish everyone all around you without limit. Spread love over the entire world. Pretty good. That's a quote. We chanted it this morning in the loving kindness meditation, and this is really one of the very earliest teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. After his awakening, he wasn't sure if he could give people help or instructions or talk to people from what he had seen when he woke up. When he saw the world as it is, he wasn't sure he could tell people about it. But eventually he did, and this is one of the earliest teachings. If you want to know what my mind is like, he would have said, cherish everyone without limit. Those above you, those below you, those all around you, and spread love everywhere. So we chanted in this slightly softened form. We did it this morning. With a boundless mind, cherish, how do we say it? With a boundless mind, you should. It says, with a boundless mind, you should cherish all living beings, above, below, and all around you. So, but what he was really saying was, you cherish all living beings, above, below, and all around you. Not so soft. If you want to know what he was saying, if you want to know what my mind sees as the practice of the way, if you want to follow my way, this is what is involved. So, boundless mind. A mind that's free, doesn't have, cubicles, doesn't have cubicles or dividers or walls. A boundless mind should cherish all living beings. It's kind of a hard row to hoe. It's kind of if we're honest, it's something that we don't have. Is that true? If any of you here have a boundless mind, I'm so happy for you. And I know you're just looking at us all with great love and compassion. Thank you so much. But most of us who have taken up the Bodhisattva path, which is this Zen path, work with what we bump into. We work with what we bump into. We call them doors, but actually, until you see that it's a door, it's really just a wall. So we bump into the walls, and then some nice artist comes along and draws something on it, and we realize it's a door, and the door opens. But we bump into a lot of walls in our practice. That's what it's about. That's actually what it's about. And when we stop bumping into walls, we stop growing. So the walls get kind of subtle and beautiful, and you want to run into that wall. Here's something I haven't yet dealt with. I want to run into this wall. And then it becomes a beautiful door. This boundless mind, we just finished Sesshin. How many of you know that? Many of you know that? Okay. We went to Sesshin, and that's what we call in Zen, the time when you spend usually a week, 5 or 7 days together, sometimes a little longer. We spend that time together to gather the mind. Sesshin means gather the mind. We gather it so we can play with the walls we run into. We gather it because it's extremely supportive for practice, but it is challenging also. So it's challenging in different ways for everybody. So for some people, it is the structure, the schedule means the zazen times are very long. For some people, it means the zazen, the meditation times seem too short, and they don't want to get up when the bell rings and start walking. Believe it or not, these are the challenges. And for some people, the food is extremely delicious. For some people, the food is extremely strange. For some people, the rooms are too hot. For some people, the rooms are too cold. These are all walls that we run into. For some people, you're surrounded by people that you love. And for other people, no. Or you love some of them. And then some of them are walls for you. And you want that to happen. That's where the growth is. If we're going to go out into the world and cherish all living beings, considering that as a worthy thing to do, how is it that some of the people in this session you've chosen to do, maybe you'd like them on the other side of the cubicle or something? Just for now. It's part of our human nature. So to take up this path of Zen, this Bodhisattva path, to be willing to make these efforts and study all of this, it's called the Bodhisattva path. It's really not easy. It's not easy, and we choose to, I don't know if you know this, but you're choosing to stay in a path that means we stay in this world with these challenges and these walls. So we're not doing, some people's vision of Buddhism is that we want to get so equanimous and unruffled that we're basically indifferent to all these challenges. That's not what we're doing. We're alive. We're alive to all of these challenges. And not just our own challenges, but the challenges everybody else is facing. And that's where we get to deepen our compassion. In this sesshin, Tenshin Roshi, who led the sesshin, our great founder and wonderful teacher, emphasized compassion. He used that word quite a bit, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Quite a bit, that word. So, compassion. And what other words did he use? He used thusness a lot. He used samadhi a lot. But he also talked about a different Buddha, Vairochana Buddha. So Vairochana Buddha is a Buddha that exemplifies this absolutely boundless mind. It contains everything without turning away. So Vairochana Buddha is one who, Shakyamuni Buddha is part of that world, but Vairochana Buddha is the Buddha that contains the whole vast universe. We heard a lot about him. Compassion, do you all think you understand compassion? No, how can we? Compassion doesn't have a particular shape. Like if I do this action, I'm being compassionate. Or if I tell you what to do, I am being compassionate and you should do that. Compassion is this relationship of respect and love and readiness to be with what's happening. Compassion is the most beautiful thing. It's what we want to develop. And again, it's not a starkly outlined, defined activity. It changes and grows and looks different in different situations. So that was sesshin. But also, I want to thank many people who made this sesshin so fantastic. There was a lot of heroic activity. One of the translations for Bodhisattva that Tenshin Roshi mentioned is enlightening hero. So the Tibetans translate Bodhisattva as hero. It's heroic action to stay in this world and run into all these walls. So there were some heroes. Here's a hero. She was a cleanup hero. So Sally, Mary Shepherd, Liliana, Wade, who were the other cleanup? Andrew, Royce.
Jim, of course.
Jim, of course. So you notice I start at the back, those who cleaned up. It's heroic to do that. Very heroic. And then the heroes who set up, Vicky and Gaelyn. Vicky really arranged this. And then the cook, Jim, and our Enos, and our work leader. Do you feel like heroes? What do you feel like? just regular. That's the best answer one time my brother asked me how this was your family tries to get used to what you're doing when you take up the Bodhisattva path. And he said, "Are you enlightened?" I said, "No, I'm just an ordinary person," which is actually kind of bragging. Ordinary person. But my brother didn't know that, and he said, "Oh, no, you're not so ordinary." Just regular. Thank you. So sesshin, and then when Tricia goes to Japan in a few more days to do Ango, both of these are recognitions in Zen practice that there are times when we really need to make a container in which to deepen practice. There are these times when, in order to to grow this boundless mind, we need to actually restrict our movement. Is that the little child out there? Because you're all laughing. So we need to restrict it because actually the situation of running into walls, running into our limitations, is what we call uncomfortable. And the discomfort and going into comfort, going back and forth across that threshold, is really a growing place of practice. So recognizing that you are uncomfortable, I am uncomfortable, is where the self comes up and we get to work with it. I'm uncomfortable in this interaction, whatever it is. I'm the one who gets to learn about this. I think they're causing it, but it's my discomfort that is what we're working with. So there are times when it's really comfortable, which is great because we need that. It's not about always being in discomfort, but it's also not about always being in comfort. So when Tricia goes to Japan, there will be times of great comfort and joy, and then there will be other times. And each sesshin, each Ango is different. So even if you think you figured it out this time, it's going to be different the next time, isn't it? The challenges are different, not just the weather. Your own being is facing different challenges. Your own life is bringing you different walls and therefore different doors to go through so you can cherish all living beings, including yourself. So with a boundless mind should we cherish all living beings, suffusing love over the entire world, above, below, and all around. Those above you, those below you, all around you. Also in this year, the year of 2025, we're going through all of the teachings of Dogen Zenji. You should put a statue of Dogen Zenji up there. I have one. Yeah, he looks just like this. And we're on number 8, which is mind cannot be grasped. Isn't that perfect? Mm-hmm. Mind cannot be grasped. So the boundless mind doesn't grasp things, and the mind itself can't be grasped. So I think many of you now know that Dogen Zenji, the great founder of Zen in Japan, now because of Dogen Zenji we practice this way, collected interesting stories called koans, and he collected 300 of them. Now you're getting familiar with this concept, right? So he collected 300, and he used many of them in his writings, and he's a really important writer philosophically and stylistically still for 800 years, 900 years. His writings are fabulous. So he collected these 300 stories, and then would, with many of them, not all, he wrote about it and changed them and turned them into doorways for us. So this story is an old story, and we collect them too. In fact, we have this story that started with our work leader a few years ago when he was having breakfast and felt this unusual soup was being served for breakfast, which was so strange. And it was orange and it was lovely, and he sipped it, and he said, "Oh, it's orange juice." So that's become one of our stories. And when I opened the refrigerator at the land for this sesshin, the label on the leftovers was golden soup. So that's become one of the Zen stories. So this story that Dogen wants to comment on in this one is right up our boundless mind alley. He collected this famous story about the old woman selling cakes. So this teacher, actually wasn't yet a teacher, he was a scholar, but very diligent scholar named Dushan, decided that he'd heard in northern China there's a certain kind of Buddhism being practiced, but historically the Zen that we do was being practiced in the south. But he'd been an expert and deep student of the Diamond Sutra. So the Heart Sutra, which we chant every morning, is about the teachings of emptiness and interconnectedness, and very rich teaching. And another writing about that same relationship with reality is called the Diamond Sutra, the Diamond of Reality. And one of the most important teachings in the Diamond Sutra is it says this in that sutra, you should have a mind that abides nowhere. So that's another way of saying you should have a boundless mind that doesn't grasp, that isn't limited, that just is open to everything happening. Like Vairochana Buddha, everything comes in. So that's the way it's said in the Diamond Sutra. You should have a mind that abides nowhere. And this Diamond Sutra, our lovely Dushan had studied deeply for a long time, and he'd written many commentaries. He'd written so many commentaries that he called himself Joe, King of the Diamond. We have some Joes here. This was Joe, King of the Diamond. And he decided to go down south to see these Zen people. And why? He wanted to expand his understanding. So he was walking along with his big backpack full of his commentaries. And he decided to rest, so he sat down by the side of the road to rest. And shortly after that, a woman with her own bundle sat down next to him and said, there's something about his indignation. Oh yeah, it's in the fascicle. It says he'd written 12 commentaries and seemed without peer. And then he heard that in the South there existed an unsurpassed Buddha Dharma inherited by many. He was overcome by indignation. Show them. And Joe, King of the Dharma, King of the Diamond. So he packed his books, crossed the mountains and rivers on his way down south. This is a very good Zen thing to do. If you have a good understanding, you take it and meet people with it. So as he was heading to join the community, he paused for rest, and this woman sat down. He said, "Who are you?" Some translations say, "What kind of person are you?" She said, "I'm an old woman selling cake." And the actual Chinese is dim sum. Have you had dim sum? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dim sum means mind refresher. So she said, I'm selling dim sum. I'm selling mind refreshers. And he said, sell me a mind refresher. She said, the old woman said, why is the Reverend buying a cake? Now you know she's trouble. Dushan said, I'm buying the cake for a refreshment. Mind refresher. The old woman said, what is that load the Reverend is carrying? Dushan said, haven't you heard? I'm Joe, King of the Diamond. King of the Diamond Sutra. I'm an expert on the Diamond Sutra. There's nothing in it I haven't penetrated. What I'm carrying here are commentaries on the Diamond Sutra. Hearing him speak thus, the old woman said, "This old woman has a question. Does the Reverend allow it?" Dishon said, "Granted, feel free to ask." The old woman said, "I once heard it said in the Diamond Sutra, the past mind cannot be got. The present mind cannot be grasped. The future mind cannot be grasped. Now, which mind will you refresh with your mind refresher cake? If the Reverend can answer, I'll sell you the cake. If the Reverend can't answer, I won't sell you the cake." Dishon was at a loss and could not think of how to respond. The old woman thereupon shook out her sleeves and left. She never sold Dishon the cake. Yeah. Interesting story, isn't it? So this is that same mind. She's asking him, do you have that ungrasped mind of the past, the future? So this is the boundless mind, boundless in terms of the people we meet, boundless in terms of the situations we encounter, boundless in terms of time. Past, present, future. Do you have that mind? She said. Roshi Joan Halifax has a commentary on this story in The Hidden Lamp, that wonderful book, and she praises the old woman for freeing Dishon from his conceptual detritus. Joan tells us that Dishon burned all his commentaries the next day, and Reverend Halifax said that the old woman pointed the way to a good teacher for Dishon, someone who would wake him up. So some versions of the story said, the woman said, go and study with Lungtang. And that it's with Lungtang that Dishon woke up. So these are historical people. And his waking up story is also quite good. Joan Halifax says, working with the koan shows us who Dogen really is. He doesn't let either Dishon or the old woman go. He imagines, and then for us now, Dogen pushes it further. So you're satisfied with that koan, right? It's cool. They're both wholehearted, and they both close it and go on their way. So in a way, that's very nice. But Dogen, because he had a couple of 100 years later to think about it, actually pushes it further, which I think is just so beautiful and useful. And it makes... helps us understand why these koans, these little stories, and what he wanted to do with them. He wanted to even open them up further for us, to help us expand our mind. So we get to see who Dogen really is. So, first Dogen says, Dishon, okay, we've got the woman asking him, past mind cannot be grasped, present mind cannot be grasped, future mind cannot be grasped. With which mind will you eat the cake? And Dogen says, well, Dishon could have just turned around and said, as soon as the old woman asked him this question, Dishon should have said to her, in that case, don't sell me the cake. If Dishon had said this, Dogen says, it would have been a sharp study. And then there are a bunch of more scenarios. Do you want to hear them? Dogen said, suppose Dishon had asked the old woman, the past mind cannot be got, the present mind cannot be got, the future mind cannot be got. Which mind will you refresh with the cake? Turn it around. So you can do that with your Zen comrades. They ask you a hard question, ask them the same question. Not to me, of course, but to you. Just kidding. Being asked this, the old woman, if she was a true person, this is high praise in Zen. All we want to do in the Bodhisattva path is be a true person, be a real person. So he says, if she was a true person, could have said, Reverend, you only know that the cake can't refresh the mind. You don't know that the mind refreshes the cake. you don't know that the mind refreshes the mind. Still with me? At that point, she should have taken up, Dogen says, she should have taken up 3 cakes and handed them to him. 3 cakes. Refresh all 3 minds. And if Dushan did not open his hand to take them, Dogen says, she should have taken up a cake and eaten it. Saying, you lifeless corpse, don't be at such a loss. So basically, my feeling is, when you read this fascicle, it's a short fascicle, but Dogen is telling us, this boundless mind is so important to keep investigating and so important to keep playing with. Don't just stop. Don't just stop. Here's a good story, and of course it's been preserved for that more than 1,000 years, but keep exploring, keep using this story, keep using your own stories in your own life, because all of these walls that we run into will keep being teachers for us. There's so much we get to learn, and we have to, because I must cherish all living beings, above, below, and all around, without limit, and spread love over the entire world. Thank you.